Yo, what's poppin', everybody? Welcome back to the podcast, another episode of Caffeine and Green with your man, Cajon Cardenas. And per usual, I want to make sure that you guys are heading to the shop, 3072 El Cajon Boulevard, San Diego, California. That's right, baby. Caffeine and Green. Let's go. Pull up. We are closed on Mondays for roasting, but every other day of the week we are open. Tuesday through Saturday, we are open 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and Sundays, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So, guys, cruise on in. Make you an amazing coffee, a latte, whatever you'd like. You can get any of the merch or any of the coffee bags that we always promote on this show. So cruise on in. Like I said, I'll make you a coffee, and it would just be awesome to see you here. Caffeine and Green, baby. Let's go. All right. My guest today is Steve Michaliszyn. He is the owner and winemaker for Propoganda Wines, a new winery in Vista, California. It is an amazing space, and he got to bring through a bunch of different wines. We tried like 4, and it was so good. It was fun to talk about wine, and it was really just awesome to like taste and kind of like, develop our palates and just geek out on it. It was super fun, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know you will too, guys. So without further ado, my man, Steve Michaliszyn. This is your time to shine, homie. Let's go. Give me caffeine and green. It's your boy Connor. What's good? Good. Caffeine and green. And we're live.
Nice.
Steve, say it again for me.
Michaliszyn.
Michaliszyn. Yeah. Steve Michaliszyn, owner of Propoganda Wines. Welcome to Caffeine and Green, sir.
Right on. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, of course. Dude, I usually just get right into it whenever I do it. But so the reason you're on the podcast today, sir, you own a new winery in San Diego, Oceanside specifically. Or Vista.
Vista,
sorry.
Vista. That's all right.
And it's, again, called Propoganda Wines, and it's in a collab space in Vista with 3 breweries.
Yep.
Yeah, so I wanted to get into that, but before we do that, for everybody, nobody's watching because we're not filming it, but explain, there's music on. Oh, I apologize. Sorry about that.
But it's so good.
Dude, I was like, wait a minute, why do I feel like somebody's talking right now? You brought 4 wines with you today, sir.
I did. Yes.
And what is the first wine that we're going to sample here?
Today the first one is Nebbiolo.
Nebbiolo. So,
one of the reasons I picked a Nebbiolo grape in the first place is because a lot of people aren't growing it. It's one of my favorite grapes. It's like if you ever had a Barolo or a Barbaresco. Those are regions in Piedmont, which is kind of northern Italy. And that's the most prominent grape that's coming out of that area. And it's just beautiful. Old world, kind of like a very regal type of grape. And they're growing very little of it here in California, but I think they should grow more. So, yeah, there's a couple prominent guys in this industry that are starting to plant a little bit more because they're being talked into it and they're finding out that people like it a lot. So,
and it does grow well here in California's climate?
A lot of things grow well. It just kind of depends on where you put them. California has so many crazy microclimates. It's not even funny. Just the Sonoma Napa area alone, there's probably 20 plus viticulture areas just because of all the volcanoes and the little valleys. And, you go 20 miles one way and it's a whole different area. So if you're on the coast, it's all different. So yeah, there's definitely a handful of spots that work out really well.
Yeah.
So, and these particular ones are from Paso Robles.
Robles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So very kind of heat oriented area, almost like a little bit of a desert, but they also get a lot of a cold area too. So
just the nose on it is so nice. It's like, and then these glasses. Thank you for bringing these glasses. They're so steezy.
My pleasure. Yeah, of course. I think they're pretty, and that's kind of a big thing with glassware. If somebody's going to come in and pay you money to drink the wine, the least you can do is look good.
Of course. How fun was it when you did it to pick out this glass?
It was awesome, actually. It's one of my favorite looking glasses. Yeah. You can't see if you did, but it would be it's a Burgundian glass.
A Burgundian.
So you would normally put Pinots. Pinot is a Burgundy wine. Nebbiolo is obviously Italian, but it kind of goes both ways. And the point of the glass is that it's really kind of bulb shaped, and that little fat belly kind of helps the fruit come into the wine. So you get a lot more fruit out of those types of wines, and that kind of elevates that characteristic to the wine. So,
and it does have a nice viscosity because that's what's making the legs in the glass. So in do you follow the sip out of the same spot on the glass the whole time?
No. I mean, so, if we can back up just for like a half a second.
Oh, sorry.
The name's Propaganda Wine Company.
Yes.
And that's because so much of the things that people hear every day in the wine industry is really just like fourth grade. Like somebody's trying to get you to wear a pair of pants, and if you're cool, you wear those pants, and you're like, all right, that's awesome. But, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. You're no cooler because you wore those pants, right? So, like, yeah, I mean, you go to Italy and you're hanging out and you're drinking things out of a tumbler, right? Does it make it any worse or better? It can still be $1,000 bottle on an amazing grape from an amazing maker, and they're still drinking it out of tumblers. So, really, there are definitely different aspects to it. But to start off, it's really just the prettiness of the glass.
Nice.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So,
dude, one thing I mean, kind of jumping into the Italy part. When I was in Chianti, I went to like Chef Dario. I forgot his last name, but he's on like Chef's Table. Mm-hmm. They had amazing wine, and they had just straight up had like little demi-glace glasses, and they were literally, as people were waiting to get into their restaurant, they're literally just handing out the glasses and just pouring you a fat glass of wine. And you're just sitting there out on the street, just hanging, just having wine, chilling. Some people are smoking cigs, and then you go in for your thing, and it's like they were serving amazing, like a 6-course meal or something, and like they're literally just giving you wine in a little demi-tasse glass, and it's like, and it was fire wine.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah,
right. That's exactly it. That's what I mean. One of the reasons why I think that wine in general should change, or why the name is even called Propaganda, is just because of that. It's like the Italians kind of do it right in that sense, where if you're a mechanic in Italy, you probably have a barrel of wine in your garage. It's part of their culture. It's like coffee.
Yeah, it's just part of the day.
Caffeine and green. Well, I mean, being old enough in the early 90s, we'd go to coffee shops, and there weren't a whole lot of them. There weren't 75 million Starbucks. There weren't people compete. There weren't 5 coffee shops on the same street competing for that business. There was one, and you drove like 15 minutes to get to it, and it was open till 1:00 in the morning, and that's what you did. You hung out. Mm-hmm. So like they were able to bring a coffee, but you go to Europe, there were 50 of them down the street.
Dude, yeah.
And that in the 80s and 90s. So like the Italians kind of have that same concept. Everybody, it's part of their culture. So like for me, I want to bring wine to the States more like that. I would, instead of like us as Americans, we kind of revere this grape, and it is awesome for sure. But it's also the only natural thing that happens on its own. It literally just turns itself into wine. So it's like, yeah, to me, I think it should be much more of a commonplace thing. So as much as it's nice to sell the pretty glass and the beautiful, concept of it, it's really, everybody should be drinking it.
Well, dude, I mean, it's definitely a part of the culture in Europe specifically. I mean, like I used to live in Aix-en-Provence, and the drinking age there is 14, but because drinking is so much a part of the culture in France, it's, wine is even younger. Like they're drinking wine at a young age. They're encouraging it, and they're like, "Here, try it," because it's essentially it's kind of like a juice. It's just like a grape juice. It's grape drink.
It is 100% grape juice.
Yeah, that is all it is.
Yeah.
But then what makes it so unique, and something that I didn't know, excuse me, was when we went to your space. You took us back there, and you showed us the fermentation process, and that was so exciting, especially like for me to never have seen it and to really just see the whole process. And you were even just like talking about it, and you were talking about how you had that masher, and you were like letting me move it around and like just enjoy it. And you're like, yeah, smell it. And it was like pungent, but it was like sweet, and it had all of the tastes that were like very much what you would consider wine, but it was like a spice, like spicy almost, because it was so like in your face, because it's like fermenting in these like plastic gallon tubs.
Macro bins, yeah.
Macro bins.
They're half a ton, so you fit about 1,000 pounds of grapes in those.
And is that like one barrel of wine?
That is about a barrel. Yeah, that's about a barrel. Yeah.
And you have those barrels on display at the space.
Currently using probably 95% French oak. And
French
then,
oak.
yeah, this year I picked up a couple brand new American oaks too.
So what's the difference between the French and the American?
I mean, really just the difference in the tightness of the grain of the wood, and really where they're from, the little characteristics. So American oak are a little bit hardier. Oftentimes you get a little bit stronger vanilla characteristic. Sometimes it's almost like a charred marshmallow, that when you like lightly char a marshmallow in the fire and you get that perfect little light brown characteristic on the outside. that beautiful little, almost like mapley characteristic to it. That you get. I personally get more from American oak.
Okay.
And the French oak is amazing as well, but it has a little bit more of that maple characteristic to me. You know, they say a lot of times it comes with vanilla as well, but I think there's just a smoothness to it that is unreplicable. So
That's a very interesting way to look at it. That's all based on just your personal preference.
it is, yeah, for sure.
Wow.
And then there's different forests. So like, you know, some forests, like even in America, you know, you go to Minnesota and it's minus 30 degrees. So it's kind of like there's so many tiny little factors that go into both the grape, where it's grown, and the wood. Same concept. Mm-hmm. You know, if you have an oak tree that's in these hardy winters, and sometimes it's really cold, they get this really, really tight knit in the grain that's in the wood. Yeah, so that's one thing we could talk about too. I don't know how much time you got, but
oh, dude,
but like you know, but like the wood is amazing. You know, in general, it's crazy where the different aspects of the forest literally give you a different characteristic in the wood after 3 years of aging it, after it's been cut down and sitting outside, and then you char the inside of the barrel, and then you smell that wood and you're like, oh my gosh, this is different than the forest that's 100 miles away, even though it's the same type of wood.
Based on the smell after you light it on fire.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy. And then there's always like California, like I go up to Central Coast a handful. And I love like Paso Robles. Santa Maria is one of my favorite places. And you know, they have California red oak up there, but nobody's using California red oak to age their barrels, age their wine. You know, there's a porousness to the wood as well. So like that's one thing I want to try to experiment with in time, is trying to utilize different types of woods and see if you can hit on something that might actually be kind of amazing.
Yeah, because that wood comes through in every glass. Like every time you taste it, you get like that oak or that barrel aged, because the wine also leaves a taste on the wine as much as the wine like leaves a stain on the barrel when you take it out, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll try that when we get to the Petit Verdot. That's just the most prevalent. That I used my favorite barrel in, which is a Séguin Moreau. Is just an amazing, you know, French house. And the characteristics they get out of that for me is a maple bacon. But you buy maple bacon in the stores and it has this like beautiful charred bacon characteristic, but it's almost like a sweetness, you know? So it kind of gives the nature of that sweetness to the wine itself. And people are like, oh, there's a lot of sugar in this wine. You're like, actually, there's none. It just gives you that perception because of the fact that it sat in this wood barrel that gave you the characteristic of sugar. It's weird.
So for one thing, like that I definitely want to touch on too, is the difference in, there's a lot of parallels between coffee and wine in terms of things that are more of a positive taste. Mm-hmm. Berries, like just citrus, aromatic, stuff like that. But then there's differences in between coffee and wine, in the sense that in wine you can have like that gravel, like a gravel taste. You can have like a bell pepper. You can have really harsh oak, like or heavy, like dry wine, stuff like that. But when you translate over to coffee, you can have those same flavor notes, but it's usually looked upon as a negative, because sometimes when you try it in wine, they're like, oh, it tastes like a little bit of gravel, like some wet asphalt or something, and it's like, I can totally see that, or like I'll get that taste, like, because like you're smelling everything, you're associating everything with smell. So it's like, why do you why? I guess it's kind of like a two-parter. Like, where does that specific taste come from? Is that also the barrel, or is that, and like, why is it looked upon as like a good tasting thing?
So I mean, I'd start off with re-questioning you and saying, why is it that that's bad in coffee? We
talked about this,
because like, if you have a natural wine, so I'll throw that word around a little bit because that's a topic of conversation in today's wine world, is the natural wines. But if you have a naturally made wine, in other words, one that just creates itself, which is 95% of wines, things come from the grape itself that just have that nature. That's just the characteristic. So that's why it's not necessarily a flaw or even a good thing per se, but like that Petit Verdot, a really common characteristic for Petit Verdot is like lead or lead shavings. Or like I always reference it to, like, if you wake up in the morning, you walk out in front of your house and it just rained on your cement driveway, you smell that rain that comes up.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Wetness of cement.
Yeah.
Right? That is Petit Verdot. But that's what the grape gives you. 95% of the Petit Verdot in the world will give you that same characteristic. You know, some places it'll be more prevalent than others, but it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just that is what that grape provides.
It's interesting. So it's the grape. It's not even the barrel.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so much to be a testament to the grapes in general. You know, like whether it's a Pinot that, you know, oftentimes has more like a red cherry cola characteristic. I mean, that's just what the Pinot grape is like. That's what it gives you. You know, and if you can really show that expression really well, just by like helping it illuminate itself and bring it to what it really is and where it came from, I mean, that's what really I think is the best thing that you could. That's the best makers out there, I believe, too, in that regards. You know,
dude, interesting.
So I'm curious that like that. Why is that bad in coffee? Is it because they didn't roast it appropriately? Maybe.
So it could be a couple things. If we're gonna go from the standpoint of tasting, just from initial taste, not espresso, but like we'll have like the way you would do like a wine tasting, we'll do coffee cuppings. So I'll roast the coffee, and then the next day we'll usually cup it to see how it's tasting. It's give it time to rest. You taste it, and then you could taste either defects or highlights, positive things, stuff like that. So when you usually get maybe say like a papery taste, or if there was gravel, or you know, too much leather, too much over roastedness, like a char, like, or a dryness. It could be too acidic, too robust. It could be over roasted. It could be chemically. It could be these things that are not. They're just for coffee. Coffee is already so complex, and it's very hard to get those more like berry forward flavors and things that are not as acidic, or that are acidic. I should say. Let me rephrase this. Sorry. You're gonna get more like fruit forward, stone fruit, stuff like that. You're gonna get it in more acidic coffees for the most part. So Ethiopian coffees really tend to be really bright, strawberry, banana, honey, stuff like that. Or you can get natural processed black like honey processed, where they're letting the cherry essentially like ferment and become like super. How do I put this? Like, I can't think of the word right now. It starts to ferment in itself, much like the grapes, and it leaves like a certain sweetness to it. And that can come from a Latin American country. You can also have, you know, certain Latin American countries that will have like like jasmine and, you know, other things like that. But it's like, those are like the positive notes. Coffee just is kind of that way. If you have an over roasted coffee and it tastes burnt, it just tastes like shit.
Fair.
You know, it just tastes like Folgers or something like that, where it's bitter to the point where it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna need all that creamer, you're gonna need all that stuff to make it taste good. But that's what separates us from, you know, the other 90% of the coffee world. That is, you know, like most people are using a Robusta in all the like 90-something% of the coffee around the world that's being circulated. Even though it is funny is that you mentioned too, like, you know, every couple blocks there's a new coffee shop. I mean, dude, here in North Park, I just saw another coffee shop going in on 30th when there's already like 2 coffee shops within a block distance from this coffee shop that's not even open yet, and it's a niche coffee shop. It says Saigon Coffee. I don't know them, but then yesterday another coffee shop opened on the other side of 30th, and that's literally right, like you can look from their spot to Dark Horse, and it's like you can like literally wave and see them perfectly clear. So it's very interesting, you know, like to your point, there's a shitload of coffee here, and it's, you know, is it all good? It's open for interpretation. Right. We'll just say that.
That's the biggest thing about our industries in general, is that they are massively interpretable, you know? Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, if there's a group of people that enjoy what you're doing, then, you know, you're in like Flynn, right? That's what it takes, you know? When you mentioned the negative characteristics to some of those beans, is that something that they're doing in the process that creates those gravelly characteristics that are negative? Or is that just the bean itself, maybe how it was grown? Because there's a lot of talk in the wine industry, and it's also very debatable that, I mean, how much the terroir really does or does not influence the grape. And does that shine through, you know? And coffee, I mean, so my grandfather used to grow coffee in Puerto Rico. when I was a kid. So I've been around coffee a long time too, even though not from a detailed perspective, just more drinking it and seeing the little berries growing on the bushes. And it's cool to see, that they also come from so many different spots.
Oh yeah.
But like, is it show through so much? You mentioned Ethiopia, and I was actually up in Tahoe recently, and I got this amazing pound of Ethiopian coffee. And I was like, literally the best coffee I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from this place in Truckee, and it was just killer. And I went back, and they were out the next day. I was like, yeah, we sold out of that one really quick. I was like, it was crazy, but I like that fruit characteristic in coffee.
Yeah. So I mean, that, like for me, I bet like the coffees, like also the black honey process that I mentioned, then Costa Rican, that would definitely be up your alley. It's like black currant, strawberry, caramel, very, very good. To answer your question though, for it to have those negative attributes, sure. I mean, coffee is very finicky. Where to the point where it's like it won't grow. It's growing here in California. There's I forgot the brand that's doing it now, but they sell like California grown coffee, but it takes almost twice as long.
Oh, really?
So yeah, well, at least according to this website, I did do some research on it, and that they're stunted coffee plants, so they're not actually growing, or coffee trees are not growing as much as they would be like in a space that's closer to the equator. But they, instead of taking 6 months, they're doing like a year, which is crazy. And now, like, in having the farmers here, so they're selling these bags of coffee for $75 up to $150.
Wow, for like a pound or
for
even less?
I want to say it's a little bit less than 3/4 pound.
Yeah, crazy.
So it's quite intensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't necessarily think it's more about where it's grown that's affecting the coffee. And coffee specifically, from what I have seen, it's generally in how the person has roasted it.
Okay.
And it's, and no hate to any roasters out there who are trying to figure it out. I'm always encouraging that. But yeah, people will over roast it. There's like tipping. There can also be, underdeveloped. And that's where you'll get like more green coffees, or like if people come in and they're like, oh, I like blonde coffees, or it's like, or I want a white coffee, which essentially is just like a green coffee, because coffee's green when you get it, and then you roast it, it becomes brown.
So I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah.
No negative aspects.
Negative.
Do you have a favorite roaster in San Diego that you've tried so far?
Other than myself?
Yourself,
other than
obviously,
myself,
yes,
obviously. I always say my favorite roaster is my mentor, Steve Rail, at Zumbar Coffee and Tea. He taught me everything I know.
Okay, cool. I've heard that before, actually.
Steve Rail?
Not by name, but Zumbar.
Oh, dude, Zumbar, yeah. Oh, yeah. Dude, low key,
cool.
Super under the radar. He doesn't do any marketing. I mean, he just now got an Instagram, and I think they did it within the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. And Instagram's been around forever now. So cool. He's definitely my favorite roaster. If I'm going to say somebody else, I would definitely say Siri Cimarron from Lofty Coffee.
Okay, cool.
She's a young hustler. I don't even think she's, I'm sorry, Siri. I know you listen to the podcast. I think she's like 27, maybe 28. Yeah. Not very old.
Pretty young, yeah.
Pretty young, and she's already killing it. She runs all the Lofties in town. But if you want to go get the best espresso from her, and she might even be on bar, I would definitely say go to the Encinitas Roasting Works. Mm-hmm. She's over there. I do Steel Mill, obviously.
Yeah.
But if we're talking North County, I would definitely say, yeah, check out Lofty. Steady State's always good. Steady State you'll probably really like.
I've had it. They're solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do a lot of more acidic coffees.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely more bright. He always gets some very, very complex regions. Yeah. Elliot is, he's doing amazing things. He's single-handedly been the reason that coffee is being elevated in San Diego. You can give him the credit. I mean, he opened up the collective where I'm at. So,
oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, man. And then he's competed. He's won awards. He has accolades. He's doing these things. But he's also just a regular dude who just, like myself, my whole niche is like hip-hop, fighting, skateboarding, and like just hustle.
Cool.
Elliot is like into the, like, I guess it's more than cycling, but he's definitely into like riding bikes, mm-hmm. not like motorcycles, but like bikes. Mm-hmm. And like off-roading and stuff like that, and that's how he got his start.
I've partied with Elliot a couple times.
Oh, you know Elliot?
Yeah. I mean, just through a local party here and there, but yeah.
Dude, sick.
So
Yeah, dude.
it was cool to see that he got his spot going in Carlsbad, and everything's going well. So
Dude, yeah, they're killing it. And I think he only has one location. Like, he's not opened up multiple. He's just handling one spot, but still just, like, expanding at, like, in a crazy rate. I think they might be opening a second one. I'm not sure. But, yeah, him, Len, like, all those amazing dudes at the collective are just, like, dude.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like it.
North County's on the come up. I mean, as you know, like, how did you come into getting that space in Vista?
So honestly, I was working with another winery in San Diego, the largest producer for the last 5 or 6 years, and they have a really large wine club, and so I've got to know literally thousands of people just working there and being at the bar. And one of the patrons that were there, him and his father put this concept together because the law changed a couple years ago where you could actually have multiple producers of alcohol in the same location. So they found that particular location, and he just approached me because he enjoyed the wines that I was making for my employer at the time, and he's just like, "You want to start your own spot here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, most definitely." And then kind of COVID hit and a bunch of stuff was happening, and I didn't really have the opportunity to do it. And then he kind of came back to me maybe like a year and a half later, and he's like, "Hey, we still need somebody to do some wine here." And I was like, "Well, I got 1,000+ cases of wine. Let's do it." So we kind of just hooked up, and we're partners in the location. And I just brought my brand, Propoganda, and that's pretty much how it came to be. So I mean, it's a good spot. I don't necessarily like the location personally. Off the freeway is good because you can see it, but it's not like there's no walkability. So it is kind of a destination spot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a good spot. I mean, it's a good spot. It's a good spot to have a bunch of people come and do whatever you want to do. Like, we're going to try to do like cribbage parties, like people can come and play cribbage and drink coffee and or drink wine and beer and just have gatherings. So it's a good event space because it has 300+ seating in there. So
Dude, yeah, every time I go in there, it's packed. It's not even just packed for the breweries; it's packed for your spot too.
Yeah.
I've actually gone, I think, definitely twice, if not 3 times now.
Yeah.
Like we went back, we'd roasted maybe like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Roasted on like a middle of a Wednesday night. Got out of there at like 9 o'clock. You guys closed at 10.
Yeah.
I was like, "Yo, let's just go stop by Propaganda. We're here at Vista right now. Might as well just go stop by, say what up." And you were gone, but your staff was super friendly, and they were really rad. And I was like, "Yeah, you're coming on the show, whatever." But dude, I mean, it was just so nice to be able to go and unwind a little bit and kind of like we were talking before the podcast. It's like I love beer. I've been drinking beer my like whole more than adult life, but just like through skateboarding, being like a dirty skater,
Of course.
always drinking beer. And then I meet Allison, and like wine turns over completely over a couple years ago, and then I just my whole level started to elevate. And then I got really into it, and I started like, again, bringing it back to natural wine. I started drinking so much wine with Allison, and then just like within coffee, there's been this huge movement that people are starting to do wine with coffee, but it's always natural wine. And then when I literally go in to meet you, you're talking, I was like, "Well, what kind of wines are you doing?" You're like, "Oh, you're doing like the Petite Syrah, the Pinot Noir." And I'm like, "But no naturals." And like, you're telling me about Nebbiolos and like all these things. And I was like, "Holy shit, this is more my alley." Cause like I'll fucking drink natural wines. It's fine. Mm-hmm. I can appreciate it for what it is, and the orange wines and whatever. But I like what you're doing in terms of like traditional wines and like things are tried and true, but also you're producing it, so it's like local. Mm-hmm. But
it's funny you say that. I mean, we could dive into that, but so traditional is natural. It's just everything has a resurgence. Right? I mean, you go back 100 years, people were literally getting grapes. I mean, you watch the I Love Lucy thing, and I'm sure everybody has a comment about like her in that big vat of wine in Italy. And like, well, back in 1900, that's how they were making wine. They picked the grapes, they stomped them, they put the juice in a barrel, and that was their wine. And that's your definition today of natural wines. People doing nothing to the wine. You know, it's essentially, they should just call it like a lack of doing anything. You know, I mean, all my wines are natural. Natural in the sense that they're all naturally made. They all come from grapes. I don't add any additives to the wine, you know, other than sulfites, which, you know, happen naturally in the wine. Wine, as it ferments, creates sulfites in the wine. So all you're doing is making sure that it has enough so that it doesn't have some sort of bad microbial thing happen to it, you know, or go bad in time, because I want to make also ageable wines. Something that 20, 30 years from now, you can drink the wine and be like, wow, this is even more awesome than when I tried it, you know, when I was 22.
Damn.
You know, so like there's a bad rap. I mean, I like the creativity, you know, but a lot of parts of the wine, like I go back to 4th grade, you know, it's like, it's this popularity contest. You know, what's the most popular thing people can do? Well, let's just sell natural wines. I'm like, well, you know, it's like saying that people who are making wine naturally, you know, but they actually don't want it to go bad, are somehow or another, you know, not benefiting the wine industry. When I think that that's a wrong way of looking at it. You know, like I love natural wines. I make natural wines. I just don't necessarily do so little that I let Brett Tannemyces get into the cellar. You know, I don't just like, I'm not okay with just all that dirt being in there. You know,
dude. Yeah, I don't like the what's the word I'm looking for here? Just the sediment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the sediment. Like I like natural wines. I've had really good natural wines where I didn't even know it was natural when I was drinking it. It wasn't until the last sip, and then I have like the sediment just come into my mouth, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Because it is, again, bringing it over to coffee. When you say a natural coffee, it's because they let the cherry and everything dry out on raised beds, gives it this sweetness. Those Ethiopia coffees, like I mentioned, but there's no sediment in the coffee when you're drinking it. And sometimes there is sediment in the coffee when it's like super over roasted or somebody like grinded it wrong, and then there's like this like you'll get like sediment in like French presses
or Turkish coffee.
Turkish coffee. Yeah,
coffee is one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I'm sure they've been making coffee an awfully long time.
Dude, yeah. I mean, especially the way that they do it, like that is my favorite. And that's one thing I do want to definitely go. Like if I go to Turkey or if I go even like to Israel or wherever they do it, where they'll heat it up in the sand and then it's just like, it's just flowing out. I haven't had that yet.
Yeah, I haven't either. But
dude,
I do like those types of coffees a lot, though. They're super good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that concept of natural wine, I think it's a lot of things in the wine industry is people just trying to sell you something. You know, that's why propaganda is more ironic than anything. You know, it's like people should understand what they're buying. You know, I mean, if you add yeast to a wine, they would probably say that that's not natural, but it's organic yeast. You know, there's yeast that comes out of vineyards. All they did was, you know, propagate it and replicate it and dry it and then sell it to you, and then you're adding it. You know, like in myself, just give you an example. I mean, I'm in a place with 3 breweries. There's all kinds of yeasts in the air. You know, so unless I direct it and actually inoculate the fermentation itself, I mean, I can get all kinds of wines. It doesn't mean that I don't want those flavors. I want the flavor that, like, the yeast that I use for the Nebbiolo comes from Barolo. It comes from Piedmont in Italy. It's an Italian yeast that they literally extract from that vineyard. They dry it, they replicate it, and there you go. You add it to the wine, so it gives you that natural way of how that grape would be in that particular place. But there's a lot of value, and I mean, there's still a lot of value in just the way something occurs, you know, without being touched, I guess, you know. So there's a lot of value to be said in that too. But I don't know. I personally like wines that taste good.
Dude, same,
You know,
same.
so.
And I mean, I you know, it's interesting though. Actually, before I get into that, can I get some more wine?
Yes.
Dude, yes.
Let's go to the Pinot real quick.
Pinot.
Yeah.
All right. This is so buttery. I love this. So now we're switching over to a Pinot wine.
Yeah.
Pinot Noir.
So the thing about this particular grape,
Oh, it definitely has like a stronger oak, I should say.
so I picked these grapes for a couple reasons. They are Latoche clone grapes. So they're grapes. So like in the wine industry, there was a thing called phylloxera back in the maybe 60s and 70s, and it's actually a bug, and it decimated so many plants. So they needed to get rootstock that was not susceptible to that animal, essentially. So you're always going to see like cloned grapes. You're always going to see grapes that have specific numbers on them that are like from particular areas that aren't necessarily going to get Phylloxera, which is part of it. That point being, La Tâche is one of the most famous vineyards in the world. It's in Burgundy. It consists of about 15 acres. And if you go out and buy those grapes, that bottle of wine, you're going to spend upwards of $5,000 plus on a bottle of wine.
Oh my God.
So these grapes, which there are very few producers of this particular clone, and it came up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's absolutely amazing. I want to get these grapes. And he's like, it was available, so I got them in 16, 17, and 18, 3 years in a row. So that being said, they're from Santa Lucia Highlands. It's just south of Monterey, maybe like 35, 45 minutes south of Monterey. It's grown up at about maybe 800 feet, so it's slightly up that hillside. Excuse me. So if you ever go to, say, Big Sur, if you just drove over the mountain, you'd hit Salinas, and that's essentially where these grapes are. And that whole headlands, that is called Santa Lucia, the Highlands.
That's in the Bay Area.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that means Salinas is the last town in the Bay Area.
Yep.
And it's a stretch, but
yeah, right.
But it's out there.
It's So these, just by the original smell of these grapes, you kind of have like an old world characteristic, almost like a dirtiness or almost like a mossy characteristic. And then
there's like a mustiness to it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that is very much like these grapes in that area, and also the barrels I used. Kind of produced a little bit of a mustiness characteristic. But it is similar for 16, 17, and 18. And if you go over there and try those, I want to say Pisoni is the most famous vineyard in that area. They all have that kind of unique old world characteristic, which I actually like a lot. So,
dude, no, it's really nice. The taste is definitely different from the smell.
Completely. Yeah. And that juxtaposition is really unique. That's a lot like old world Burgundian is a lot like that. You'll have a lot of kind of like earthy characteristics, and then you'll have a lot more like kind of acid and fruit in the background that just kind of open up afterwards.
And it has like this creaminess to it, like it's almost like a marshmallow. Nice. I feel like it's like a.
It's funny, I get that actually.
It's like
a lot of that too comes from the different types of French oak you use too. Remember I was saying like that lightly charred marshmallow?
Dude, well, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, it's not like a marshmallow, like you're just eating it out the bag. Like, no, it definitely is that charred marshmallow for sure. Even the mouthfeel, it's very nice. Dude, fucking crushing.
Thanks, man.
Fucking crushing.
This is the first one I've actually sent to the. I've only sent one to the San Francisco Chronicle, which is the largest competition in the States. And I got a gold medal for it, which is kind of fun.
Wait, newspaper? The San Francisco Chronicle.
San Francisco Chronicle. They have a wine competition every year. So they get thousands and thousands of entrants. And they give prizes out. Not prizes, but like, gold medals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I got a gold for it, which I'm stoked. I was very happy that happened on the first one. So hopefully
good for you,
I got to send some more and see how they do. But thank you.
Yeah, fuck yeah. So you go up to... You were saying you get your beans. You get your grapes from Napa and like Sonoma area. So you're in the Bay Area quite a bit then.
Not as much as I'd like to be, actually. I love it up there. It's beautiful. There's so much like open land once you get north of San Francisco itself. I lived in the city in San Francisco for about 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I went up there a lot more. But yeah, I try to get up there as much. I'm going tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I'm driving up to Healdsburg to pick up some stuff. So.
And then you're not a one-man show, but are you kind of like the one-man show?
I have a partner in terms of the business characteristic, but in terms of the wines, I have produced all these wines myself. Yeah. So, it's just did as much as I could, while in the last 5 or 6 years. And then now I'm still working on it and hopefully we'll make some more good stuff. That's the goal. You can only make so much. And you got to make money doing it, though. I'm trying to figure that process out.
Just that little thing.
I'd rather just give it away, if I could. That'd be great. I just make it and give it away, but it doesn't pay any bills that way. So
Right. With wine, is there, to make a name for yourself, do you have to compete?
Oh, yeah. For sure.
That's like a big part of being successful in wine?
That's the part I hate. Like, I don't like business. So I actually come from an economics and math business background. So, I worked at an investment firm for 10 years. And I hated it. I didn't hate the job or the business, actually. I hated the aspect of money. You know, like everything people do, not everything, but so much of what people do every day is revolved around the dollar. You know, you gotta have a house, you gotta support yourself, you gotta buy yourself food, you know, so you have to do something that makes that money. So like, I mean, wine's no different, you know, that's what I'm saying. If I was, you know, had enough means, I would just make the wine and then maybe sell it or just give it to the people that really appreciate the fact that I worked really hard at making something that I really like and they like it. But yeah, to make a name for yourself, you have to somehow or another be the kid that pegged their pants. You know, you got to be able to like, you know, do something that people want, you know, and then that way you can create that name for yourself. And I don't know how to do it. Not really, a little bit. I try to emulate some people. You ever heard of the Prisoner wine? It's kind of it became somewhat of a cult wine.
Is that the one where you scan the QR code and it like shows it like a 3D thing?
No, that's new. That's like, I don't know actually who makes those, but I know that is very popular, obviously incorporating like kind of like that. You know,
it's like an augmented reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like an AR kind of aspect to it. And that's marketing. That's somebody selling you an idea, right? That's somebody selling you a label.
It's a marketing company selling a wine.
Yeah.
That, you know what I mean?
Which could be anything.
Yeah.
You know, so
it could
like,
literally be anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, that concept is what, you know, you have to do it, but you know, sometimes you do. I don't know. It's a hard thing. I have a hard time, you know, wrapping my head around the industry in that regards, you know, because I kind of spit in the face of the wine industry because, you know, people are just selling other people bullshit, you know, and that sucks. I hate that. But at the same time, you like I said, you got to make a living somehow, you know? So, I mean, I'm more of a realist. And I think if I can make a name for myself just trying to make the best product possible and tell you what I'm doing, then at least that's real, you know, instead of some of these wine companies out there that are trying to sell you low sugar wine. You're like, yeah, I fermented it. It shouldn't have any sugar. You're like, I mean, what do I look like here? You know, and then people are buying into this and they're like mass producing these things saying, oh, there's low sugar and, you know, low sulfites. You're like, of course. I mean, that's any amazing wine that doesn't have any sugar left in it, you know, unless the fermentation stopped or you added some, you know, so
yeah.
I think it's just, I don't want to sell people bullshit about that. So if I can do that and make a good product, I think maybe it'll just take care of itself somewhere in there.
I mean, I would have to agree. I mean, at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. Like that is what you're providing for people, and people will eventually, you know, catch on. I mean, when I met you, it was only like a month or two ago, but you said you had just opened your space, right? Like you're how long have you guys been open?
3 months. Yeah. Collab's been open, I think 5 or 6.
For the whole space is new.
Yeah, the whole space is new, but like ourselves, we had a hard time getting our license because we needed to produce something in that location. And it was like kind of just in the middle of harvest. And I was like, well, we don't have grapes. How are we supposed to make something here? So anyways, I made a couple different things. I made a mead. I made a strawberry wine. So I produced them in that space, and then they gave us our license at that point. So,
wow.
So yeah, we've been open just maybe 3 months now, and so far so good. I mean, I've got to know a lot. I'm from here, so I mean, I'm from Carlsbad. You know, so I know a lot of people in that regards, Encinitas and stuff like that. And they're just being, you know, I started a new career and I was almost 40, so I figure if at that point you're not really gonna fuck around. You know,
100.
I mean,
yeah.
When you're 22 years old, you're like, you know, I might get wasted and not go to work the next day. Okay, you know, now I might get wasted, and if it was like a new career that I really care about, I'd still show up. I mean, I still showed up then too, but you see the point, you know?
yeah.
Some people wouldn't. They would, you know, try 20 different things. So I guess
Yep.
when you only have so much time left, you kind of try to do the best you can at it, you know? So, that being said, I know a lot of people in San Diego, so hopefully that, you know, that helps the process, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about who you know, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
It doesn't hurt.
it definitely doesn't hurt.
You know. Yeah.
So you were born and raised in Carlsbad?
I wasn't born there. I was born in New Jersey, but I came out here when I was like 6 months old and 75. So and I grew up in Carlsbad. Yeah, just kind of like La Costa. I mean, skateboarding, actually. As a matter of fact, to bring it back to skateboarding, one of the reasons I go to Steel Mill is the association with Tony.
Oh, yeah. Do you know Tony?
Not personally, but I've watched him skate as a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to go to the Del Mar track all the time, dude. The surf and turf was amazing. you know, and some friends of ours owned airwalks back in the day. So like they had a ramp in their backyard, and we'd go and watch them all skate in the backyard. Like I lived in La Costa, so we literally went up the hill and watched them all skate, and it was killer. So
Sick.
I mean, there were little like half pipes all over the place. So we would just go and screw around, and I mean that was what you did back in the early '80s, you know.
Dude,
So
that's sick.
it was pretty fun. So
Damn.
and to still see that like he's still here, and like so much of that culture is not only got, you know, it just exploded. You know, the X Games and everything in the 90s, and it's just like, I'm sure it got way bigger than even they anticipated. You know, so like, that's cool to see. I love that. And I love that I'm kind of still here. And I've left a handful of times, but coming back and like seeing people that are still killing it and what they're doing and like the growth of the area, it's fun. It's cool to see.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. I mean, I've lived all over San Diego. I've definitely actually lived in Leucadia, and I would cross over, and I would actually worked at La Costa, the Omni, or whatever. I worked at the Chopper Center there over in that area.
Oh, nice.
For a little while. So I've gotten to explore all aspects of San Diego, pretty much, like with the exception I haven't lived in Chula yet. But I've lived all over San Diego, and it's like North County is definitely its own thing, especially with skateboarding. I mean, skateboarding is such a part of it's a part of the culture in San Diego regardless of the area, but specifically in North County. It's very interesting. And I mean, you know, Tony used to come into the Oceanside location, but you know, it was mainly just Riley, right? His son. And Riley's still the guy who, like, you know, he's been on the show before and he's coming back on the show again. I mean, the fact that he's owning a coffee shop and, you know, he's still, you know, we were talking about this the other day with some friends. It's just like, he's his own guy now. Like,
Yeah,
you
which
know,
is awesome.
It's not like it's even, he's a hawk and everything that entails, you know, but I mean, Riley just put out, dude, I want to say he put out 3 parts this year, maybe like for sure 2, if not 3, and gnarly.
That's killer.
Yo, he proved he has paid his dues in the skateboarding world. He's still getting better. I mean, and dude, and like he's a homie, right? So when he started getting into martial arts, he was asking me about jiu-jitsu and striking, and like I got him to my striking coach. And you know, he does jiu-jitsu now, and he's like, this dude is like a legit athlete now, you know, like pro skateboarder, rock star as well, because he has a very successful band.
That's
and
awesome.
Then also like now he's a martial artist. It's like, yeah, dude, like you're fucking killing it. Like you're your own G. Like,
It's killer to see. I mean,
yeah.
it is really killer to see, especially to be able to do it on your own. Right. That's awesome.
Dude, I love it. I love it. So moving forward, like what is one thing, I mean, we had talked about doing stuff with coffee. Oh, what are we going to do now?
Would you like a little more wine before
Yes.
while we start the next banter?
What is this one going to be?
This is a Cabernet from Pine Mountain.
Cabernet. Dude, I love this. I fucking love this.
There is something that is a bit romantic about wine.
Dude, it is.
I mean,
man.
just the color.
It's a different
looks like
vibe.
art, you know, I mean, it is pretty awesome.
Dude, cheers.
Salud, for sure.
Salud. Salud. Fuck yeah. Oh. Right off the nose, I'm gonna tell you right now, like I got plum.
Definitely.
Like plum oak, but the oak is very much cut by the plum.
So this is a super ageable wine. This is a Cabernet, but this is a Cabernet from Pine Mountain, which starts at 1,600 feet and goes up to about 3,000. Just kind of northern Sonoma, west of Lake County. Thank you. It has a lot of acid actually for a cab. So it has a lot of acid. It had 60 to 70% brand new French oak. So like this wine will easily be amazing in 20 years, you know, and you'll get these characteristics, but it'll be a little softer. You know, like I actually find it has a lot of acid for a cab. Mostly because of the yeast that I used. Actually was a very acid retaining yeast. And I kind of wanted to make it ageable in that sense. So right now it's really young, even before being a 19. But like you said, plum, I almost get like maybe a little like boysenberry. But then it opens up and I actually get some like maybe eucalyptus or kind of like tree or leaf characteristics too, you know?
Oh, I can get that for sure. That's on the tail end though. That's like on the tail end of the smell.
And this is the one I've actually have branded. It's called the Puppeteer. So I'm trying to do a little bit of that too with the labels. in the sense that, they should be marketable a bit,
Dude, the legs on this, like that viscosity. This one has the legs like super gnar, like more than the other wines. I mean, like your other wines had like legs as well, but this has a very, very noticeable, like around the entire glass.
Yeah, this is just around slightly over 14% alcohol, which is kind of a typical area for Cabernets.
Yeah, it's very acidic. Dude, that smell. Yeah, man. The boysenberry, I could get that for sure.
And they're not growing a lot of fruit in Pine Mountain, actually. There's maybe like 300 plus acres, plus or minus 400 acres for, that particular AVA. And we were pretty fortunate to get these grapes. So, I think it turned out good.
Dude, no, it's fire.
Yeah.
I was going to say, okay, so this being said, shifting back to wine, I was going to probably start talking about skateboarding, but shifting back to the wine, why wine? Why not beer? You're in San Diego.
Oh my God, what do I look like? I used to manage money for a living.
I mean, I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Like, if I was going to start a brothel, it wouldn't be in Vegas. Okay, let's just put it that way, right? So I'm like, I'm not going to start a brewery in San Diego. How are there? Like 4 million breweries here,
dude.
It's
for
like,
real though.
How would I distinguish myself?
Yeah.
Like, if I knew I could make the best beer by far, I would do it. But like, it's just, I don't need that much competition. But that's not necessarily the reason, but that's just part of it, So I quit my job at 35, and I moved to the woods in Colorado, and I did a bunch of, like, brainstorming. Literally, I have pieces of paper that are like, what should I do for a living, because I can pretty much do anything I want to do. I'm still young enough, I'm still, smart enough. I have enough money, not like a lot, but enough where, like, I could go back to school and do that, So I'm like, all right, well, what am I going to do? And I mean, I was always the kid, and like, if anybody I went to high school is listening to this, they'll totally understand what I'm about to say. I was the kid that brought the box of Franzia to the party. I did. You know why? Because there's 5 bottles of wine in an $8 box, right? First of all, so that's economics. I got wasted off $8,
Yo, my man.
And I drank beers too, right? I mean, I love Bud Dry. Bud Dry was my favorite.
Okay.
But like, in general, like, I was lucky. My dad's from Poland. So I got to go to Europe as a kid, and like, I've walked these vineyards when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I not thinking anything about it. They were just there because they're in Europe, right? So I'm like, I have this memory, always idea that like, wine's sophisticated. If you want to, I was money hungry at the time, like as a kid, right? Like, oh, I'm going to study business, and like, so like, you think of wine as the time, I'm like, oh, wine's sophisticated. I'll bring wine to the party. I'll be the sophisticated kid. So they'd call me Francie, which is kind of funny.
Damn, that was your angle.
That was it.
Even at a young age.
Totally. But it stuck with me, oddly enough. And like now, and like I said, I was doing this soul searching, and I'm like, I love this product. So I was always thinking to myself, what am I going to spend my days doing? I want to do it with a product I like. So I wanted to make a tangible asset. I wanted to make something that I could touch or feel, smell and taste. And like, I mean, I'm really good at drinking. So, for a guy who's not really a large kid by any means, right? Yeah. I'd hang out with my 300-pound buddy, and we'd drink a bottle of bourbon, and I'd be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm really good at this drinking thing,
I'm going to focus on that. I'm
I
going to lean
focus
into this.
in this area. Exactly. So I did. But then I was like, I came back to San Diego, and a guy from high school actually had this winery in town, and I stumbled upon it, and they're like, yeah, we could use somebody's help. So I was like, cool. I took some classes, actually, just locally in Maricosta, and kind of learned the basics of it and what went into it, and just sunk my teeth into it. And then I kind of fell in love with it. It is an amazing concept, actually. I always liken wine to life. It starts off in this kind of like baby sense. It's a grape. It's sweet. It's like you are as a 13-year-old. You're kind of sweet. You're nice. Sometimes maybe you're a little brat.
Preteen, little brat.
But like you're young, you have no character. You might have a character, but that's rare. Usually kids, you grow into character. And that's kind of like wine. You start off as this grape, and then, you kind of grow a little through your fermentation process. And then somebody puts you in a barrel, and then you really get these characteristics, like all this character, all this like personality. And then they put you in a bottle right when they think that you've peaked. So imagine if you could just bottle up yourself when you peak in life. And then just save yourself for a little while, right? You kind of like, you'd meld together. And wine is kind of fun because wine gets better to an extent, and then it gets bad. And it's kind of like ourselves. We get better to an extent, and then we kind of get old, and our cells die, and then you might even turn into like an old grumpy old bastard, right? But at some point in there, that guy might have been a pretty cool cat.
At some point.
So yeah,
Yep.
and that's kind of like the wine. It's always changing, and it's kind of fun. If you can open something up in like 10 years and you try it and you're like, holy shit, this is beautiful. And then like an hour after you open it, it's even more beautiful. You're like, holy shit, this is so powerful. For something that happens on its own, the intricacy and depth to the product is like, it literally blows my mind. I'm still blown away. I think I always will. It's not like something like electrical engineering where you know exactly what you're going to get at the end of the day. When you do a math equation, you're like, with wine, you could make the same wine from the same vineyard for 50 years. And you're like, holy shit, 87 was an amazing fucking year.
Yeah.
You're like, why? You're like, I don't know. It snowed in March. I mean, it's like, it was insane. And it was just like all these things happen. And like somehow or another that changes the characteristic. And you're like, that's so powerful. Like you can't replicate that. I can't replicate that.
Dude, yeah.
So like, I love that concept of it and how it grows with you. So.
No, I agree with that. The first thing that comes to my mind that I've wanted to ask you this whole conversation, how do you know, again, a two-parter, how do you know a wine's going to be an ageable wine, number one? Mm-hmm. And number two, how do you know when a wine's going to go bad? Or you don't?
When it's go bad, like in the bottle or in the process? So like in the
bottle.
bottle. You don't. I mean, you kind of estimate. They're all estimates. In the bottle, it's like what you put in. If you're a producer, what went into the bottle. If you're just a patron buying it, you kind of have to like listen to what you've heard about that wine. But on that same concept, like the ageability, like you're saying, right? I mean, certain grapes have thicker skins than others. And that in and of itself might give it more tannins. Like Cabernets in general are pretty tannic wines. And then you're adding on top of that, like tannins protect the wine. They protect it in the beginning, they protect it in the barrel. And if they're heavy in tannic structure, they're going to protect it longer because it helps to fight off things.
Okay.
Kind of like an antimicrobial, right?
Okay.
And because of that, if you have heavily tannic wines, those wines are going to last a lot longer, than like softer wines, less tannic, less acidic, like acid. Acid helps to keep wine stronger, longer too. Doesn't go as bad. So like if you have a highly acidic wine, highly tannic wine, Cabernets is definitely one of them. Petit Verdots. There's a lot of old Bordeaux. Well, there's a lot of grapes that are from Bordeaux, the region of France, where they're hardy. I went with this one because we can do the Petit Verdot. I actually have a street Petit Verdot, and we'll do that next.
Boom.
That's my favorite. That's definitely
my favorite. We're going to end with the last one.
Yeah, we're going to end with a blending grape that I want to promote as should be the primary grape.
Okay.
And on that aging characteristics, I mean, they have that tannic structure where you can stick it in a bottle. So like the tannins are like protein chains, and they bind together and then they hold onto each other. And when they do, they drop out of the wine. They make it really smooth and really silky. And sometimes you can replicate that. Some houses like Opus One from Mondavi, they do a really good job, I think, just off the top of my head, of somebody who like replicates that concept at a very young part of the wine.
Okay.
And sometimes you can add things like, people might say unnatural, but like egg whites. I mean, they're natural. They come from chickens. You literally crack open a bunch of eggs. You just take the whites and then you add it to the wine, and it helps those protein chains bind together. Really? And then they drop out. And then you have this long, silky wine. So then you drink the wine, you're like, gosh, this has this like smoothness to the wine. It's so silky, and that's what you want to replicate by it sitting in a bottle for 20 years. But if you can do it at a younger part, you can sell it and make more wine and make more money. And it actually adds a really beautiful characteristic to the wine. I have actually not done that yet, although I want to, and experiment with that and see how it works, because some people that are making very expensive, very wonderful wines are doing the same thing. So,
wow.
But like,
that's
Pinots,
incredible.
I know, right?
I didn't know you could add chicken or egg whites. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow. Dude.
I mean, it's people, and so like a non-natural way of doing that would be to buy a chemical from a producer that does the same thing. It's the same concept. It helps it to bind together. Or you could literally just get egg whites, and they do that. At Opus One, they will get egg whites, go through dozens of them, add them to their barrels. They'll let it settle, and then rack it off the top, and then you have a really smooth, silky Cabernet. So
Wow. How long did it take for you to catch on to this? I mean, like, I know you've been involved in wine the whole time, but like, from high school days, but for you to really understand and grasp the concept and these things that you're discussing.
I mean, so I started actually making wine in 2014. And I would say within the first 2 or 3 years, I learned a lot, like just a tremendous amount, just by the sheer volume that we were doing. It wasn't, and nothing compared to like Sonoma or Napa. I mean, we're talking about San Diego volume. But we did everything by hand. Like we had 200 of those macro bins, that you saw me when I had 4 in the back.
Yeah, we had like 4 there, yeah.
We had a couple hundred, and we did them all by hand.
Holy shit.
And then, I was lucky enough and really fortunate enough to be part of this house that they, had lots of different vineyards that they got these grapes from Russian River and these Pine Mountain grapes, Napa, Sonoma, just all over. And I started to realize what was going on. And I've always tried to learn from the people that are not, the best or the most popular or the most famous in society as a whole, that are making wine. There's a guy out there, Raj Parr, and Sashi Morman, and they're doing stuff. They were in the Psalm movies. One of them,
Yeah.
One of them was, right? And
I just watched that. I just watched the one, like the first one.
yeah, which is pretty awesome. But I think he was a Psalm. He became a Master Psalm. I believe he was a Master Psalm, really close. But he was up at Michael Minna in San Francisco, and pretty young guy. And then just, wrote a book and knows so much about the terroir and everything like that. So I try to see what they're doing and see what they're making and see how they're doing it. And what are the ways that they're going about making the things that make them so famous or so popular. And it's by learning that every single year in and year out, you kind of you're emulating the people that are doing the best thing out there. And you learn a lot that way too. If somebody was making coffee and you're like, holy shit, this is the best stuff I ever had. What'd you do? You just ask questions.
Dude, always.
You learn as much as you can, and you'll just, at the end of the day, you'll be better off for it. So, it take a couple years, but like I said, the basics of wine makes itself. Wine, you get a bucket of grapes and you mix them up, in 7 days you'll have a bucket of wine. That's a fact. Yeah. I tested it. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to get some cab grapes. I'm going to put them in a 5-gallon bucket, and I'm literally just going to stir them. I'm not going to do anything to them. And in 7 to 10 days, I had a bucket of Cabernet. No joke. That's it.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was okay.
It was okay.
It was natural. What are you going to do?
There you go.
It needed a couple more years, but no. Yeah. But it was done,
Yeah.
If somebody told me that when I was 15, I would have been getting grapes from every neighbor I could find, and just making it in my garage.
Dude, there you go.
It would have been so easy.
Dude, so when you're processing it, because I did see a video you did show me, you have this, a perforated screen, but it goes upwards. And
yeah.
so you don't smash the grapes by stepping on them. You have a machine that essentially is for lack of a better term, squishing it and squishing the juices out of the side, holding all the sediment back and giving you just the juice. Mm-hmm. Can you walk me through that a little bit?
So there's 2 things there. One, people might not know, the pressing of the grapes with your feet is actually not that process. That's actually to extract the juice at the very beginning when you get them, the very first day.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of natural wines, and I have one that I did that way too, where you just get the grapes whole berry right off the vine, and then you get a bunch of friends and you stomp them. And that's to extract the juice and the color, and then you ferment them. And after you do that, then you press them. So then you go into that press that you're talking about.
Okay.
That's a bladder press. So it goes into a large cylinder, and there's a bladder in the middle, like a rubber bladder, and that just fills up with air and pushes it up against that serrated edge, kind of like a colander. And then that pushes the juice out. So that's just so you just get as much liquid out of it as you can.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a unique process too, right? So that's everything in wine is debatable. And there's a philosophy behind each one,
Open for interpretation?
Yeah, for sure. Or which makes it the best. That's the interpretation, So you might hear a free run. That's people that don't do any of that. So they literally let the grapes ferment. As it ferments, it breaks down the grape and turns it into wine and actually gets all the juice out of the grape, or most of it. And then they just let that juice flow into a barrel. They don't press it at all. They just put literally a hose in there, or they put it into that colander and let that juice flow, and that's it. They don't press it at all. And that's free run. So that's essentially not getting any of the internal characteristics of the grapes. I actually don't agree with that. You know, even though they'll always sell you like the most expensive bottle in a winery will be like the free run juice, the free run Cabernet or whatever. I don't agree with that at all. By doing it for nearly a decade, I always like the pressed juice more because it gives you more of that tannic characteristic. It gives you a little almost of the sweetness of the berry that wasn't fully fermented, and then it kind of continues to ferment through the barrel. So like, yeah, I mean, everything's debatable, you know, so.
I love it.
Yeah. But even the big houses, like they all mostly use really massive bladder presses. So they'll put all the grapes once they're finished fermenting after about a week, because it takes about a week plus or minus, depending on how you do it. And then they press it off. Just give it like a little 10, 15 pounds of pressure just to get all the juice out of that. And that just goes directly into barrel after that. So.
Damn. So what is well, there's also, actually, before I even move on to the next thing I wanted to ask you, but there was something that you're also like, you're doing another new thing. And you were talking about the Merlot, the young Nuevo Merlot.
The Nouveau Merlot, yeah.
Nouveau Merlot.
So it's actually a Beaujolais Nouveau is the term.
Beaujolais.
Beaujolais, yeah. And that's a region of France, much like most of them are just regions. And in that region, they grow a Gamay, which is a grape type. And every year, the very beginning of the year, once the fermentations are finished, they bottle that immediately. And it's a Beaujolais Nouveau in the sense that it's a brand new wine. So there's two parts to the fermentation in wine. There's the first part, which takes about a week. And that's just the sugar eating the grape. Yeast eating the sugar and turning it into CO2, carbon dioxide, and alcohol, and wine's the finished product. And then the next, like maybe month or two, it's called malolactic fermentation. And that, again, is a natural process. And it changes malic acid into lactic acid. And that just naturally occurs. You can add enzymes to it to make it happen faster, but it essentially is a natural process. So they just bottle that before that secondary process. So in other words, like if you're tasting the wine and it has a lot of like acid to it and it's like kind of on the tip of your tongue, it's just the beginning of the wine. It's a way to celebrate that year and enjoy the wine that you just made. And it's just kind of a beautiful thing that French do, you know? So I made instead of a Beaujolais, because we're not in Beaujolais, and I didn't have a Gamay grape this year, although I'd love to get a Gamay grape. I did a Merlot, and the Merlot was super fruit forward and really pretty, and I did it in a steel tank.
Yeah.
So I took I got those grapes, and right after it was, maybe like a week after it was finished, I bottled it. So, yeah.
And then you did like a little event or whatever at Collab House, right?
Yeah, we did. We essentially just called it like a, Nouveau Merlot Day, as a, because I mean, it could be anything. It could be any grape. Like I think Sangiovese is a really pretty grape. Chianti. You mentioned you spend some time in Chianti. Sangiovese is the main grape that they grow there, and it's very fruit forward, much like a Grenache. I mean, I think those would all be really pretty. Like, as a matter of fact, I tried my 22 Sangiovese today, and it's so pretty. It's just like lots of little like raspberry and strawberry characteristics coming off the nose. Like, nice. That would have been an awesome Nouveau too. Just something to do that's fun. That like, why wait 2 years when you can have it in 2 weeks?
Dude, you have that tart forward. It's just developing that tartness too, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And then as it changes, and that like lactic acid is like milk, right? The creaminess and full mouthfeel you get from a glass of milk. Well, that's lactic acid. So that's what happens if you let the red wine naturally, get rid of its malic acid, which is much more tart, like you said,
Interesting. I mean, dude, I've also, I don't know about you, but like, I mean, I'm sure you do, but for wine, even though you've been doing it so long, the same thing for me is like with coffee, I'm still learning so much new things. And one thing for me that I just learned within the last week was like, kind of talking about that creaminess aspect, or just like things that are developing, half and half. Like my roaster, she likes half and half drinks, and then I have one customer who comes in and get it half and half. Dude, to be honest, I didn't really know what the whole deal with half and half was, and it's like heavy whipping cream, it's heavy, and then whole milk. And you add it to the espresso, and then if you make like a chocolate drink or even like a honey drink, it just adds this level of creaminess to your beverage that is not there. I mean, you're going to get it with whole milk. You definitely are not going to get it with oat milk, and you're definitely not going to get it with almond milk. Because you're lacking the lipids, like the fat that's going to be in the texture of the drink, right? When you add the heavy whipping cream with a little bit of whole milk, it adds this level of just like, this is a coffee drink?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Dude, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I love it.
I just only started doing this because Natasha wanted to have half and half in the shop. No, not her, not her. But Natasha is my roaster, like my apprentice. She's opened up my eyes to that, and I mean, one thing that I've noticed is like what I consider maybe like a normal or average day roasting. When I'm teaching her about what to look for roasting or to do these certain things, I'm learning new things every time. I'm like, oh, why did I do it that way? Like, oh, I guess I could just do it. Oh, this makes more sense to do it this way. Or she'll point out something new to me. So in teaching, I'm also learning the aspect a lot more. And it's something that's only been recently like occurring to me. I'm like, oh shit, son. Like
Maybe that's because you're getting older.
Dude, maybe. I mean, fuck. Like
That's exactly it, man. It's crazy how like life is an amazing concept that as we age, we learn all the time.
All the time.
You know, like if you're only fortunate enough to know that as a kid, I mean, imagine how much more value you could have been to you, or not you particularly, but anyone, if they realize that at a young age, to where like, you know, you learn so much from the things around you if you just keep doing that in everything you're doing. I mean, it's just going to add a vastness to what you do. It's going to add a depth of whatever it is you're doing, you know?
Dude, it's adding a new level of understanding. And I even can translate that to the podcast. I mean, you were asking me before the podcast, you know, you're going to be in a 10-hour drive tomorrow. You know, if I have any suggestions for a good show for you to listen to. I said, well, listen to the episode with Lanisa Williams. I mean, she has such a unique story that, you know, for me, when I was doing that show with her, that episode with her, I left that episode of that podcast with a better understanding of communication. Because for the first like hour and 20, maybe hour 30, she literally was just talking about her story. And I realized in that moment that to be a more efficient communicator, it's not just about speaking. It's just as equally about listening.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt that I elevated myself as a communicator in that episode, because the conversation after she discussed what had happened to her and her story and how she's overcome things, it expanded on a conversation that was much deeper. And it was all just through listening and giving her the space to express herself and explain and just tell her side of things. And I think that can translate to anything. And it's like, dude, just in these last couple of weeks, I feel I'm going through real time changes, and I'm starting to like, and I reflect on these and I'm like, oh shit, son, like something's changing right now. And you're noticing that it's happening.
That's the best. That's literally the best feeling you can ever have.
Dude, I agree.
Like cognition, being cognizant of what's happening while it's happening. I mean, they say that's the sixth sense, right?
Dude, something.
You know, literally. It's like, and then when that does happen, you ever get that? What is that? Deja vu? No, what do they call it? When you think you know what's going to happen.
Like telepathic?
Like as it's happening, You're like, oh my gosh, this has happened before, you know?
Or deja vu, be deja vu, yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my gosh, but then during that, I always think, what's going to happen next? Like, can I tell, you know?
Dude.
Yeah. But yeah, communication is literally, it's everywhere we go. Mm-hmm. You know, it's everything we do. You know, from it used to be a long time ago, it was just sending a letter to somebody or like print media, and now it's like just social characteristics and like the internet and the television, just everything is insane. It's like I think people lose track sometimes of perspective, you know, because they always are coming from their own. But if they like give a chance to listen and kind of like see where everything else comes from, even in what you're doing, like even if it's coffee or you know, or a personality, whatever, it makes whatever you're doing a little bit more valuable, you know, and yourself more so afterwards.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, dude, it was super crazy. I'm not religious now, but like when I was growing up, I grew up, you know, Catholic in like a Mexican, very traditional Mexican, like Catholic family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what you're doing. So every
As
night.
did I.
Yeah, a Mexican family?
Puerto Rican.
Oh, that's right. You said
Yeah.
Puerto Rican. That's
Yeah.
right.
My dad's from Poland. My mom's from Puerto Rico.
Damn.
Yeah. Both very Catholic. Yeah.
There you go, though. So like every night before bed, my dad was like, yo, you know, taught me how to cross myself, to say what you say. You're saying your prayer. But I don't remember if this was like an actual prayer, but I remember my dad telling me, he's like, you have two eyes to watch and to see. You have one nose to smell. You have one mouth to speak, but to be wise with your words. And then he's like, and you have two ears to listen. And I never forget like him saying these things to me because like, dude, through my whole life, I was just popping off at the mouth, like like hella just crazy. But as I've gotten older, for some reason that plays in my head a lot more. And now, especially like, you know, not just now because the podcast has been going for 4 years, but it's only been in this last couple months, and specifically again these last 2 weeks, where I'm like, oh, like, dude, it's starting to like click, I guess, like to say, for lack of a better term, you know, it's like.
It's the best feeling.
It is.
It is literally the best.
I love it, dude. I absolutely love it.
And it doesn't matter when it happens.
No.
Like if anybody's listening, or if I would say that to anyone, you know, like it could happen at any point as long as it happens. I feel sorry for people where it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, not to throw out anything out there in the, you know, what's going on today in our world, but like, I think a lot of people don't let it happen. They don't let other people's perspectives come into play. They don't listen enough to maybe how they came to think that way, you know? And I think that seems to be a big problem in everything that's going on. You know?
People aren't open to change, and that's
not
across.
even close.
That's across
Not
the
even close.
fucking across the board.
The world.
Anything.
Of course.
And change is the most exciting thing. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if I think we were talking about this the other day, but it was like, I don't want to do it, and I like, you know, something I don't want to do, or like I'm a little bit scared, but I'm feeling comfortable. Oh, okay, like yeah, I should definitely just go and do that now.
100%, right?
You know, because it's. I also have another thing, like another one that I like hearing from this guy. It's being uncommon amongst uncommon men. It's a guy talking. So, or just you could say being uncommon amongst uncommon people.
Sure.
Better way to put it.
However.
That's like the stuff that for me, it's like if you stop learning, if you stop changing, if you stop wanting to adapt, that's when you really die.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm about to be 37 in March, and am I still skating? Yep, still skating. Am I doing it to the level that I was when I was like sponsored and getting paid? Hell no.
Yeah.
But it also comes with time, and like things are changing, things are adapting. You're becoming, you know, I'm a business owner now. I do these things, but everything is in constant flux. Everything is in constant change, and it's a constant evolution of ideas and like new perspectives and new ways to look at things. And it's like, dude, that's more exciting than anything else.
Oh, it's
because
the best. It's
the
literally the best.
The possibilities are endless when you're open for that change. You know what I'm saying?
And if you can use that even in what you're doing, that's why, like, when I was an investment analyst, I was like, there's no change. There's no progression, you know? I mean, sure, but not not really, you know, but like you making coffee, like being able to try new things, you know, like Vietnamese coffee, right? Whole different concept. Turkish, same concept. But like wine, same aspect. It's like we should always be open to learn more and change more and listen more and see what's going on and be creative. And Yeah, I mean, they relate so much to life, to everything you do, you know.
Dude, yes.
I don't think people do that enough, you know.
I would agree.
You know.
I would agree. What's this last wine we're about to get into right
Petit
here?
Verdot. So this is my favorite. This is
say it again.
Petit Verdot.
Petit Verdot.
Yeah, Verdot. So in Bordeaux, which is like kind of like the western part of France, northwestern part, there's a place called Bordeaux. It's a region, and in that region, there's 5 main grapes. I think there's 6 or 7. But, I mean, red grapes. There's a couple of whites too, but they're Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc.
Yep, Cab Francs.
Right.
Love them.
Merlot, Malbec, and Petit Verdot.
Love Malbec.
So
Yep.
Petit Verdot is mostly a blending grape. So if you were to actually get a breakdown of Bordeaux wines, it'll be like 90% Cab, 90% Merlot, depending on, there's a river that comes through there, right? The Gironde River. If you're on the right side, you're Merlot. Your left side, you're more like, they grow more Merlot, they grow more Cab. And then there'll be like, you know, a little Cab Franc, maybe 8% Cab Franc, and maybe like 2% Petit Verdot. All the time. 5% Petit Verdot. What's her name? Screaming Eagle. Super amazing wine. Heidi Barrett, one of the, you know, I think they sold the most expensive bottle of wine ever in the world.
Whoa.
Again, small amounts of Petit Verdot, right? Tiny amounts of Malbec, because like these little characteristics that it offers, you know, kind of round out the whole wine. It just
it's balance.
Yeah. And you can, you know, when you're trying through barrels, like if you're just drinking straight Cab, you're like, oh, this is super good. But you're like, how can I make it a little edgier? You know, how can I get a little bit of that wet cement that I want to walk?
Yeah, there we
I
go.
want to walk out at
Bring it back.
9:00 in the morning when it's raining. I want to walk outside with a glass of Bordeaux and be like, Petit Verdot. That's it. That's it, right? So me, I want the whole glass to be raining on my head. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I want it to be amazing. So like, I think you can. I actually added a little bit of Petit Syrah to this. No joke. Don't tell anybody.
Okay. You just told the world.
No. Nobody's listening. But there's so much fruit in it. It just adds a little bit of the fruit to the background, so it's not just 100% like that. But yeah, I like this grape a lot. I think it should be one of the. And if you look at it, it's dark. It's not as inky as it could be. It could have been inkier, but oftentimes it's dark and rich and inky. It's tannic again. Offers a lot of tannins to the wine, so it is a great blending grape in general.
So my question to you, I like to, one thing I've been doing now that I've been trying to expand my palate and get more into the wine game, and not the natural wine game, of what's considered natural in this area. More, Vino Carta, Little Italy.
Sure.
Another spot.
Yeah, they do a good job of bringing in good wines.
How do you get in there as a shop owner? Do you have somebody who goes into sales, like more business aspect, or do you wait for a wine bar like that to approach you, be like, hey, we want to bring your wine in?
I mean, when I get to the production level, I'll just go find out who owns the place and go meet them and say hi, or find out who's running the place and being like, hey, this is what I do. Like, who are you buying? Why are you buying it? I mean, do I fit in your store? Is it something that we could come together with you selling a great wine that I make? And I think they are a natural wine sellers. They do a lot of small producers. In general, I think what I know. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But at the moment, I'm not ready for that. I'm not at that level right now. It's 100% direct to consumer. The only way you can get it is to come into the winery. And until I start making more where I can substantiate that, I mean, that's a lower profit margin. You want to talk business. Nobody like Vina Carta or Ruth Chris or anybody else is going to buy my wine for more than $15 a bottle. It's just the way it goes.
Wholesale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe 20, 25, 30 if you're like, Opus, maybe $50, but like it doesn't, you don't make any money doing that. You have to make thousands of bottles of wine, thousands of cases of wine just to sell wholesale. So it's more marketing. It's more like if I can get my wine in some really cool restaurants because they make amazing food and they really value the craft of their production of food, I want to be in those restaurants. So that on that menu, they'll have top-notch great wines, and then hopefully mine can be part of that, and they'll be like, oh gosh, who's this? I've never heard of Propaganda Wines. You're like, actually, it's a local producer making, grapes from great vineyards, but he's producing it here. That's kind of the goal in that regards. Places like Vina Carta are awesome. I'd love it if I could do it, but I'm not at that point yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Restaurant. So how do you approach restaurants then right now?
Same concept. I mean, I would go in. I would pick personally the best restaurants in town. I would go to like Malarkey's places. I would go to places like the guys who did June and Jolie. I would say, hey, although they do a lot of natural wines too, but I would go to there and say the same concept. I'm trying to produce great wines. If you like them, I hope I can be on your menu someday to go along with your great food. I think kind of like anything, I want to be able to make the best product possible that I can, that I think the most people would try and are just like, this is really enjoyable, and if they can enjoy it, I like craft things. So like the food characteristics of people that are making amazing food, I want to be part of that aspect. So I would just walk in the door and chat with them,
Dude, I love it.
But I'm not ready to do that. I can't do that yet. I got to make a living somehow first. And then,
yeah.
But like I said, we just opened in the middle of harvest. So like I wasn't ready to buy 100 tons of grapes. I just couldn't, I wasn't ready to do it. But hopefully next year we can do that. Hopefully next year we'll be able to substantiate getting more fruit, and we'll have, enough wine where I can do that and like, realize that I'm not going to make any money selling it to these restaurants, but at least it'll be the name where like people are like, wow, your wines are at these particular restaurants. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's about getting the name out, right? Getting it in front of people. I was talking to one of my homies the other day, and he was asking me how business is, and I was like, dude, business has actually been really nice. Like December, November, really good. Especially like December has been really nice.
Cool.
Which I figured it was probably going to be just based on being in the coffee game for a minute. But the one thing is, like, I do ask people when they walk in the doors, like, how did you hear about us? How did you hear about Caffeine and Green? Some people, 90% of the people say Instagram.
Really? Cool.
Oh, yeah. And then what I found out about their geotags, or like, people in the area. If you're in the area, it'll pop up, blah, 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 whatever. Yelp, another thing. Yelp, Instagram. But then as of recently, a lot of people, a lady today came in and she said, I live in the neighborhood. I literally live like a block up. I've passed by here so many times. How long have you guys been open? We're about to make 7 months on the 20th.
Oh, cool.
Oh, it's like, damn. So you guys have only been here for like half a year. It's like, well, you mean like I got the keys on February 1st, but we opened the doors in May, right? So May 20th is like official first day. My friend was saying to me, he's like, it takes somebody 50 times of seeing your logo to associate, like, hey, maybe I should stop in there. Mm-hmm. He said by like a study or whatever, because he's a head brewer at like a space here in town. And he was telling me this, and this is coming from a person who's providing beer, like a successful brewery here in town. But it's like, how many times have these people have walked by my space and not even acknowledged, like, well, obviously two people think it's like, a lot of times people are like, I thought this was a weed shop. It's like, no, it's not a weed shop. But, it says coffee roaster on the front, like normally it says like there's some sort of cannabis in the name. But like, or like, I mean, like, I'm not proving my point right there.
People
but like,
don't read. It's all right.
They don't read.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's like, it says coffee roaster on the sign. So I wonder how many times you actually passed by before you decided you were going to come in, and that just makes it so interesting to me. But I mean, I don't know, man. Like the marketing aspect, it's huge. It's pretty much all of my business, along with actually doing roasting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure these podcasts help.
I mean, dude, to be honest, it's super interesting because like the podcast, it's so like Texas fucks with the podcast tough. I don't know. Dude, I have like one homie in Texas, and it's not all him. I have like Indiana, Ohio, like the eastern coast. Not a lot of people in the middle fuck with me. Like we're talking like Nebraska, Wyoming. At one point during the podcast for the last 4 years, I was in 49 of the 50 states.
Oh, cool.
In the middle, it's died down. Definitely on the coast, and then southwest, and then up. Like it kind of goes like that. I think there's a state in the middle that fucks with me. I forgot. But Mexico, Poland, Poland fucks with me tough. Germany fucks with me tough. Chile, Brazil, French Polynesia. But those are like probably my fighter homies out there. But I mean, dude, it's, that is just from the listening aspect. Mm-hmm. I'm direct to consumer. Yeah. I'm wholesale. I have I have Steel Mill. I have Drift Cafe. I have a couple other cafes that I do. So it's getting the name out. It's doing those things. It's gonna, eventually be doing something with you, a project. So it's like,
How do you like that?
How do I like what?
That selling.
I love it.
Do you?
Yeah.
I hate it,
bro.
It's my least favorite.
I mean, it goes back to what you were saying about.
But that's good for
without the competing.
Yeah.
I've competed once in coffee, and I say it very loud. Like, bro, I was at a very successful coffee shop when I competed, and I thought I was hot shit. I thought I was about to come in there and like kick some fucking ass. Bro, I came in dead last.
Yeah.
And this is like 4 years ago, something like that. And I was pissed. I was like, I couldn't fucking believe it. And now to get to a point where I was at that point in my roasting career to now where I'm here, it motivated me to do better. But it also, like, starting from web, e-commerce, pop-ups, to now where I have my own space and I'm like getting it out there. I just think about it like, I don't care if I hate it. I don't even care if I love it. I'm indifferent to it because this is what I need to do to keep doing what I want to do.
For sure, right?
And that's kind of like where I've come to it. It's like, you're only going to work as hard as you're going to work for yourself. I don't want to work this hard for somebody else no more.
I think coffee's much more difficult than wine.
It is.
I think the intricacy to coffee is way more difficult.
And we're talking taste, though, right? Because I don't know about the wine making process. It could be more intrusive. Like,
I think the taste, I think the acknowledgement of it, and I think like the ability to stand out. Like, I mean, I don't know, how real should I be? I mean, like, I'm making a decent product in a place where a lot of people don't make the great product. Mm-hmm. If I put myself in Napa, maybe no one would give two shits. Maybe they don't give two shits now and whatever. But, like you said, there's 3 coffee shops on that street. So it's like, that's hard. It's hard to stand out in a product that I think the intricacy is even more intricate than wine. It's harder, I think, and I have a pretty decent palate. I think it's harder to tell those real deep intricacies that make it, why people come just for that characteristic of it. You almost have to do something outlandish. And I think I may have mentioned this to you too before. Like what are people doing to stand out? And maybe not necessarily just for monetary reasons, but like maybe for the experimentation of like hitting on something that there's a group of people out there that are like, holy shit, this is great. Mm-hmm. What is it? A friend of mine has these French oak barrels, and I started roasting these beans from Nicaragua with French oak barrels, and it's fucking spectacular.
Boom.
It's like Louisiana chicory, but way better because it sat in there was a Cabernet in the barrel for freaking 4 years.
Yeah.
And then I roasted it with that barrel. I'm like, that's going to add a characteristic that I guarantee you doesn't exist out there. And if it does, I haven't had it. I've never even seen it or anybody doing it.
Yeah.
So like, if you can, not that you could do that, but or maybe you could.
I definitely could do that.
But like one could try that. And then next thing you know, you have this pound of coffee that you're charging $38 for, and at least give them 16 ounces, first of all. I want to stab the next person that does a 12-ounce bag. I was like, it's a fucking pound. Just give them a pound.
Dude,
what's the 4 ounces? You're just cheating yourself and everybody else.
Dude.
It's like that's our, materialistic economy that they had to cut off 4 ounces from the pound. Because I just spent $40 on a freaking pound or 12 ounces or whatever it was up north. Mind you, it was really good coffee, but still. Just charge a lot and give them the whole pound.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
though?
no, I got it.
Like, in terms of, like, the uniqueness of coffee, it's hard. I wouldn't do it. I want to do it just for fun because I love coffee. Like, I love coffee. But, like, I think that being able to stand out is difficult. It's a hard route,
Well, it's so many
you're
things.
a cool cat and all, so there's that. If they
Thank
knew
you.
I mean, if I lived here, I would come by and get some coffee for sure.
I appreciate it.
You know,
Yeah.
but I think people would understand. I mean, really, people would do that. You know.
Well, that's the thing. Is like to your point. I mean, one thing, like, I mean, this is dude. That's such like a layered like response almost because being in North Park, like you've been to Steel Mill, where Steel Mill, I give them an entire different profile of what I do here. Like my espresso that I have here is a blend that's more what I call like traditional nostalgic coffee taste.
Okay.
When you go to Steel Mill, you're getting single origin Ethiopia matcha, blueberry, honey, strawberry, acidic espresso. But it's also more fruit forward. Here, I do more like traditional Italian style with none of the over roastedness, but like chocolatey, like great, like just
Darker characteristics.
more balanced,
Rich,
but nice, and none of that over roastedness, right? But then I also give them different coffees that they're selling. I don't sell any of the same coffees with the exception of the new coffee that I just did for them, the Bendashones. Here is my single origin. But then I just did the Brewhouse Brew for them, which is a collaboration we did with like a Heavy Breathing Foundation. Oh, cool. So they have different stuff up there. But then when I come here, you're in the Shark Tank. When like, you know, Vista, they're out in the fucking cut. You know, you're in Vista.
Oh, yeah.
You're out there. You're by San Marcos. There ain't shit in San Marcos. And there is like Vista and then there's Oceanside, right? So it's like there's not a whole lot going on anywhere over there. And then you're into Carlsbad. So it's like, okay. When you're here in North Park is the Shark Tank. You want to see if your coffee tastes good? Come here.
Make it in North Park.
This is the proving ground.
I like it.
In my opinion.
Yeah, cool.
If you want to be the top dog in the coffee game, you're either in North Park or you're in downtown or you're in the barrio because that's where Cafe Moto is. And Cafe Moto is the OG. Yeah. Cafe Moto is the kind of it's like Panikin and Cafe Moto set the stage, right? And then there was like Zumbar, who's like close to 20 years in business now, but when I got with them, they were like 13 years. So it's like there's the OGs, right? And now there was this like explosion of people. You have the Coffee and Tea Collective, you have James, you have
James, yeah, it's another one.
All these people who've been, you know, around for like, I don't know, 7 to 10 years now. And they were in that third wave boom of like white countertops, white walls, a little bit more detail to the coffee than a second wave. But now you have this emergence of newer roasters who started maybe, you know, 3 years into when like Coffee and Tea Collectives, like say Coffee and Tea Collectives started 10 years ago. I started 3 years in. So they were already 3 years old when I started my coffee game. Now they're 10 years old. I'm 7 years into my coffee game. My coffee roasting adapted from what I was taught as Zumbar, and then I went on my own and I did these things. Now there's new roasters that are called like Bellwethers or I think they're called Bellwethers. They're like literally you program the profile, you roast it, it roasts on its own. You don't even have to watch it anymore. You just let it go. Mm-hmm. You can have coffee shops that have a push and go, and then that's your coffee. It might not be. It doesn't have what I call what I say on the podcast when I say to other people about the aspect of like, why does your food taste so much better, or why does mom's food taste so much better when she makes it than when you make the same fucking dish? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because it's that love, it's that energy, and I'm big on that. And I think what separates me from like my competition here in town, and not to say that they don't have the passion or they don't have that love. But it's like Lil Wayne said. Lil Wayne talks about it. He says, yo, I think I'm the best rapper alive. And I think that anybody who's doing their craft and their specialty, I think they should believe that they're the best, period. He's like, as anybody should think that. Mm-hmm. And I think, in my opinion, like, I've ruffled a couple feathers. Like, I've heard from people who've come on the show. I invited them to be on the show because I want them to be a guest. And after talking to them and having this one-on-one conversation, they'd be off air, and they'd be like, I was unsure about you, bro, because you came into the coffee game talking a lot of shit. And I was like, because that's what I do. I come from a skateboarding world where like we talk shit, and I'm not your typical, like, you're not going to come in the shop and you're going to hear some like Father John Misty or some indie music. Yo, if that's your thing, all for it. I love it, but that's like, it's been done. It's basic. I want to elevate. How are you going to separate yourself? So to bring it back to your question is like, how are you going to separate yourself? Well, you're going to separate yourself by becoming a niche. You're going to stay in your own fucking lane. You're going to find your lane. You're going to stay in that lane and you go. People here, I don't have food 2 days of the week. I don't have food regularly here, but I'm still able to make my sales because people come here for the coffee. How do you stand out in North Park? You come to my shop, you're known for the quality. You're known because you're also going to get the hip hop aspect. You come here, we have fighters, we have we have skateboarders, we have rappers, reggae artists. We have people who are actually out here doing the thing. There's not like a gimmick to like hipsters and all these other things. We cater to everybody, but we also cater to the people that are out there grinding every single day. So that's my niche. That's where I stay. I stay with the skateboarders, the action sports, the fighters, the MMA, like jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, whatever you want to do. But we fuck with everybody. I don't care. And that's also like we have a podcast. Like this is what you do to stand out. But then at the end of the day, I talk a lot of shit, but I back it up because you can come here and people who are, whether it's the coffee game, people from Mexico, people in the coffee game in Mexico, everybody comes over here and they're like, they try the coffee and they're like, damn.
Nice.
All right, this is separates it from everybody here. And I'll have other coffee shop owners in this area on the show. And we talk about it and they have the passion and they do these things, but maybe they're a young roaster and they're not at that spot yet. Or maybe they just have, how are you going to separate it? They have the next level drinks.
I got one for you.
What's that?
How about we put some beans and some killer wood,
Okay.
and we'll put it in the barrel with maybe like a gallon of wine in it. Let them soak it up.
Let's do it.
And then we'll roast them.
Let's do it. I mean, I don't see why not.
And see what happens.
I don't see why not.
I mean, you never know. Like I say, you never know.
They do it with whiskey.
It'd be kind of fun.
They do it with whiskey.
They do everything with that, yeah.
So why not do it with wine?
Nice.
Like,
Right?
yeah.
I should have brought a bottle of whiskey. Sorry.
No, you're totally fine. Dude, I wanted you to bring
I
wine.
apologize.
No, dude, I think just like to kind of like close that little section of the convo is like, this is by no means like talking shit on anybody in the area, but like, I think when you have this much competition, especially in this area, especially within El Cajon Boulevard to University, and then you add 30th in the mix, that main vein of how many people are here and how many people are competing, the cream rises to the top, man.
Yeah.
The survival of the fittest at the most basic level. Either you're going to adapt, you're going to create, or you're going to perish. Mm-hmm. And I like it. Like I tell people recently, I was like, yo, I'm getting comfortable in the Shark Tank. Like what's popping? I'm getting acquainted in this area. Like what's good? Yeah, and like, let's keep that going. Nice. Because I draw motivation from that. And I always like, I'm not good. I need to be better. Mm-hmm. There's at no point am I ever going to get comfortable at this spot. Like, nah, son, we got to keep motivated. We got to keep like pushing. And if my skaters are like putting it up to that level, I need to be on the same level. You're going to compete. I'm going to compete. I want to do this because I'm motivated by the people who are motivating me. And if they're drinking the coffee and they're saying it's the shit, and then like you have other people coming in saying like, yo, this is the best espresso in San Diego, hands down.
Nice.
Then that's what I want to hear. And that's what I want to keep doing. And I want to keep proving that to the people. And we do that through consistency. We do that through dedication to the craft. Mm-hmm. And that's what I say that ad nauseum a lot. It's like the dedication to the craft. Yeah. Don't stop doing what you did to get you to get you to where you're at right now. That's why the podcast is still going. We were talking about early in the conversation about money. People every day are doing stuff to get that dollar, that are money motivated. Mm-hmm. I say it right now. The podcast is the only thing I do that I do not make any money off of. And I do this solely for the aspect of the benefit of what it comes from these conversations with other people that help me change my train of thought. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's more valuable than any amount of dollar.
Yeah. I mean, most definitely, man. I mean, being able to learn from people every day is massively valuable.
Dude.
You know, in everything you do, you know, whether it's your business or, you know, or anything, your craft. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, nowadays we throw terms around a lot. but you know, like, it's just being able to do the best you can at what you're doing, you know, really.
Always.
It really kind of what it comes down to, you know. So like, I talk about restaurants and crafts of coffee and wine and beer. Like, most people don't work that hard. They don't, you know. Maybe a couple owners do here and there, and you know, a handful of people do, but everybody else are fucking lazy as shit. And I don't care how you look at it. That is a fact.
Yep.
You know, I'm almost 50. So like, I've seen a lot of people. I've been all over the world, and it's the same thing everywhere you go. It really is. It's like the people that kill it are the people that bust their fucking ass doing it.
Every day.
You know, whether it's learning more or opening their mind more or like trying to be creative, it's like they're always trying really hard, you know? And like, that's just the common thing you're going to hear from Tupac to, you know, Bill Gates. It's like they busted their ass all along the way, you know? And it's just like, that's what happens. It's not like somebody is like, no, I'm not going to get up today, or no, I'm not going to try this today. It's like, no, everybody else does that. So like, more power to you. I'm glad that it's working out. I hope it works out even more awesome for you. I haven't even tried the coffee other than the stuff at Steel Mill.
Well, that is my coffee.
Which I enjoy tremendously.
That is my coffee.
That's why I go there. So, you know, but like yours, no, you even said yours has a little different characteristic and perspective, and I value that. That's awesome.
It is. So. I'll definitely, you're going to leave here with the bag for sure. But like, I will say, like, dude, just because it says Steel Mill doesn't mean that it's not my coffee.
No,
like,
that's cool. That's
those are my people. Like, I have a love for Steel Mill that is matched by none. Like, you know, there was a point, and I mean, like, sorry guys, but like, there was a point now, because like, they're past it now, we're reopened and everything, but there was a point when we were closing the Oceanside location, and it was like, I think somebody said something about like the Titanic, like, you know, like the fucking violin, you know, the sinking ship. And I remember thinking, and I even said it, I was like, dude, I'm here. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, the coffee's proper. If we can't keep the business going, I'm gonna ride this out until the fucking ship sinks. Totally. Like, yo, and I will never not do Steel Mill's coffee because of the fact that I absolutely love every single person that works there. There's new people, I don't know them yet, but the core of the owners, and when I was working there, and the people who are still running it and making it run so amazingly well now. I mean, I will never not do their coffee. And so it's like, that is my coffee. And I do think about it. It's like, yeah, it's Steel Mill, but like, that's Caffeine and Green North. That's just what it is. Those are my people. It's a different version. It's a different version. This is hip hop, and that's metal and fucking Satan and like motorcycles and just fucking badassness. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I love them for that. And that's what makes it work, bro. Like, that's what, like, change is the best part ever. Like, when I walked into Steel Mill, I straight up, the only similarity I had to anybody there was the fact that I talk shit and I skateboard.
Nice.
Do I dress the same? No. Do we listen to the same music? Hell no. Do they not even like the music that I listen to? Most definitely yes. But like the coffee and the vibe and the quality of people and the love that's there is like matched by none. And that's why it was like, it didn't matter. And that's what skateboarding was. And bringing it all back, it's like, dude, like, it's just amazing people. And I mean, dude, if it wasn't for Shay right there behind you, the reason he's on the wall is not only did we start in coffee together, but he was my first podcast guest ever. He showed me what a podcast was.
Nice.
And like, we were like, oh, we know so many pro skateboarders. Like, Joe Rogan says it's so easy to do a podcast. Like, let's fucking do it. Like, and it was not easy.
Yeah.
And it was super hard. But it was all thanks to Shay.
That's awesome.
And he is Steel Mill. He's the guy who came up with Steel Mill. So it was, you know, you've definitely tried the coffee. You're just trying a different version. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Nice. I like the different versions, man. It's good.
Appreciate it.
I like the different versions of everything, really. So,
dude,
that's fun.
Well, what's you know, we've already like we're approaching 2 hours. Cool. Tell me, what is like the next? What do you want to maybe possibly achieve? Do you have some goals? And then just like finish it out. Like, where can people find you? Address, Instagram, whatever.
So, I mean, those are good points, you know. So I'm going to preface that with that I'm a realist. So there's two things. I want to make an amazing product, like literally as good of a product as is possible on the earth, because grapes are grapes. You know, if I can get the best grapes or really, really solid grapes. So you can just, you know, if I can do that and continue that and like make enough money to continue to do that, I'm happy. That's my goal. So I'm currently in Vista, in this tiny little, you know, middle of nowhere Vista, like Propaganda Wine Company, and in Collab Public House. And hopefully I can get to some profitability. That'd be good, because, you know, wine's very expensive. I can't like roast it and then make it in a week or two. It's like 3-year process. So like we're drinking 19s and an 18. So, you know,
it's been a minute.
4 years removed. So I made some stuff this year. I'm going to make some stuff every year, probably for the rest of my life, whether it's in business or not. If people enjoy the product, that's awesome. I hope they come and buy it. You can only get it directly from me in Vista off of Sycamore. There's probably 50 breweries around there. There's 3 inside Collab. Yeah. But there's only 1 winery. So
boom.
But we do like to rage. So there's that. So if you like to party, I mean, come in a Monday night and we'll do shots of rosé and we'll party all night long.
Shots of rosé, dude. You're saying the right things.
We are open till 10 o'clock at night every day. So you know, you might as well come, except Sundays, 8 o'clock. But yeah, that's the goal. You know.
Sick.
So. I think that there's a lot of people out there that like product, and if you like good product, hopefully you come and join myself. So,
fuck yeah! Tell them the address where they can come find you.
2129 Industrial Court in Vista,
California. And what about Instagram?
Instagram's Propaganda Wines plural.com. This is a website, and Propaganda Wines is the handle on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
All one word.
Yeah, Propaganda Wines.
All right.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for the amazing wines.
Oh my gosh,
dude,
I appreciate you, man. You kidding me? I barely listen into podcasts. I've surely never been on one. Sick. But I really appreciate you having me.
Fuck yeah. And we'll get you some coffee. And guys, please, everybody, go check out his winery. It's fucking dope. And I'll probably see you there. So just shoot me a DM. I'll meet you there. We'll have some wine.
Right on. All right. Cheers.
Peace.
Yep.
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. That was an amazing conversation, and man, that wine. Woo, son, get there while you can. Go visit my man up in Vista. You will not be disappointed. And guys, I just want to say thank you again to everybody around the world who continues to show support for Caffeine and Green week in and week out. I see you, Australia. I see you, Chile, Poland, Germany, Mexico, everybody in the U.S. Yo, appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. And guys, that's it. That's a wrap for this week. We only got 2 more podcasts left for 2022. Let's go, baby. Looking forward to it, guys. So stay tuned, and I'll see you next week. Peace.